All right, today we're tackling something absolutely critical, something that's changing so fast it's almost hard to keep up with: how we actually test AI. Let's get right into it. I mean, this is the multi-trillion-dollar question, right? Every single day, there's a new AI model that claims it's the next big thing. So how do we really know if they're getting smarter? How do we cut through the marketing hype and see what's real? Well, it all comes down to something called benchmarks.
Probably the easiest way to think about this is to imagine benchmarks as the official report card for AI. Yep, it's basically the standardized school system we've built to grade these super complex systems, to figure out where they're acing the class and where they've still got a lot to learn.
So at its core, a benchmark is really just a standardized test. The whole point is to create a totally level playing field. That way, we can take an AI from one lab and another AI from a competitor and have them solve the exact same set of problems. It's how we know if the whole field is actually moving forward or if we're all just, running in circles.
So for the longest time, these AI exams have pretty much fallen into two big buckets. On one hand, you've got your knowledge benchmarks. Think of things like MMLU. These are basically giant, high-stakes trivia nights, testing an AI on everything it's memorized about science or history or law. Then, on the other hand, you have function benchmarks. These are the practical exams, like SWE Bench. They don't care what an AI knows, they care about what it can do. Can it actually solve a coding problem? Can it use a computer?
Okay, but here's where things get really interesting and, frankly, a little bit messy as we look towards 2026. The problem is that old report card system, it's breaking. The tests that we used to think were super difficult are now being aced by all the top students in the class. And that creates some major headaches. So the first big issue is something called benchmark saturation. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the point where all the top AI models are getting an A+ on the test. And you can see the problem, right? When everyone gets a perfect score, the test is basically useless. It can't tell you who the valedictorian is anymore, and it definitely can't tell you if the next generation of AI is any smarter than the last.
And look, this isn't some far-off theoretical problem. This has been happening for a while. If you look back to even May of 2024, the MMLU benchmark, which used to be the gold standard, was pretty much saturated. I mean, just look at this chart. You've got models like GPT-4o and all its peers just clumped together above 80%. It's almost impossible to see any real difference between them on this test anymore.
And that leads us to the second, and honestly, an even trickier problem: benchmark maxing. You know this one from school, right? It's the AI equivalent of teaching to the test. Because all these benchmarks are public, the AI labs can and do train their models specifically to ace these pests. And sometimes that doesn't actually make the AI any better in the real world. And this is the real kicker, isn't it? This whole practice creates this massive disconnect. You get these AIs with absolutely mind-blowing test scores, but then when regular people like you and me try to use them for real-world stuff, we find this huge gap between the AI's on-paper intelligence and how useful it actually is day to day. Okay, so this chart right here shows you exactly what happens when you give these models a surprise pop quiz. A brand new coding benchmark called SWE Bench came out, and boom, the models that were scoring super high on the test they'd studied for, SWE Bench, suddenly saw their scores just plummet on this new, unfamiliar test. It's a perfect example that they were probably over-optimized for the original exam, not for just being good at coding in general. So what do? The old tests are saturated, and everyone's gaming the system. Well, the entire AI research community is now in this constant, frantic race to invent harder, better exams. They are quite literally moving the goalposts just to keep up with the machines they're building.
And when I say they're moving fast, I mean the pace is absolutely relentless. Look at this. We started the year with the old knowledge tests, like MMLU, basically becoming obsolete. By the end of 2024, everyone's focused on coding skills with SW Bench. Then, before we're even halfway through 2025, the game changes again, first to hands-on tasks with Terminal Bench, and then to these super complex simulations of actual white-collar work. The goalposts aren't just moving, they're in a full-on sprint.
This frantic pace has basically forced everyone to come up with new strategies for making better tests, and they really boil down to three big ideas. 1. Stop asking trivia and start simulating real-world jobs, like, can the AI make a slide deck? 2. Measure how long an AI can perform a task, for hours, not seconds. And 3, the most radical idea of them all, create tests that measure pure abstract reasoning with zero prior knowledge.
And that last point, that brings us to the most futuristic and honestly, the most fascinating approach to testing AI I have ever seen. We're talking about a test that's designed not just to be hard, but to measure a type of intelligence that is fundamentally alien to anything we've tested before.
Okay, to really get this, you have to understand this one crucial difference. Almost every benchmark we've used, even the really hard ones, ultimately just tests a fancy form of memorization. The AI isn't really thinking from scratch, it's just really, really good at recognizing and applying reasoning patterns it saw in its training data. But what we really want to test is pure, raw reasoning, the ability to look at something completely new and just figure it out.
And that brings us to this, ARC-AGI 3. It was just unveiled, and it came with a claim so bold it's kind of hard to believe. Right now, as we speak, it is the only unsaturated benchmark for general AI in the entire world. It's the one test, the one final boss, that no current AI can even get close to beating.
So what does not even close actually look like? Well, humans, we score 100% on this test. The most advanced, most powerful, most expensive AI models on the planet, they score less than 1%. Think about that. This isn't just a gap in performance. It is a giant, gaping chasm. It proves there's a fundamental piece of intelligence that our current AI methods haven't even begun to touch. And this quote from the researcher Brandon Hancock, it just perfectly captures why this test is so different. ARGI 3 isn't a test of knowledge. It's not about language. It's a series of simple, visual puzzles that you can only solve by experimenting and figuring out the rules. It measures pure logic, completely stripped of human culture or any training data. An intelligent alien species that's never heard of Earth could solve it. Today's AIs simply cannot. So where does this all leave us? What does the state of AI testing look like as we head into 2026? Well, it means we're entering a brand new era, one defined by what you could call a never-ending exam. You know, the creator of this test, Francois Chalet, he really said it best. The whole point of ARC-AGI isn't to be some final exam for AI. It's designed to be a moving target. The whole idea is to constantly track the absolute frontier of what's possible. As AI gets smarter, the test gets harder, always pointing towards the next great unsolved problem. So if you're going to take away just a few things from all this, here they are. First, benchmarks can't be static anymore. They have to evolve just as fast as the AI they're trying to measure. Second, seeing a benchmark get saturated isn't a failure. It's actually a sign of incredible progress. And finally, the new frontier, the real cutting edge, isn't about testing what an AI already knows. It's about testing its core ability to learn something new. And that really leaves us with one last massive thought. We now have a test that measures a form of pure, almost alien reasoning, and our very best AI systems fail it, completely and utterly. So the question for 2026 and beyond isn't if they'll ever pass it. It's what's going to happen to all of us when they finally do.